How's everybody doing? I'll try to make this pretty quick. I know I'm one of the last two before we go to lunch, so everybody's probably getting ready for that. So I'm going to talk about network automation and on-ramp to how you can do this without having to spend millions of dollars to do it. We're going to talk through the orchestration domains that are involved, the on-ramp process to automating your operations, the tools that we use in some of the use cases that I'm going to present, as well as what those use cases were and how you can take this forward. So first of all, I'll talk about some of the orchestration domains, the way we view things. Typically, in managing a device and the configuration on that device, the services and the device config specific items were managed as one major big object itself. As we move forward to a more model-based approach in the future, those things tend to be separated, where you have the service lifecycle and the device lifecycle as two separate things. Service models are a big thing in the coming future with service management, but device management, you can use tools that a lot of you probably already have. You can use your Ansibles, you can use Napalm is something that's been mentioned a few times this year and in previous NANOGs. So those are tools that you probably have that you can use without having to buy a lot of things from vendors. This is an approach to walking through those. In order to do meaningful automation, we think that you have to look at the device itself first as a foundational element. That probably seems like a no-brainer. Lots of duh comments probably in your heads when I say that. But a lot of people try to jump ahead. They try to jump to automating maintenance activities when they don't have a good handle on how to manage the config on a single device itself without doing manual CLI-based management. Only when you have a foundational automation program in place for your device, then you can leverage that to do some meaningful automation of maintenance activities from there. And then you should worry about policy and services after that. There could be some argument on whether policy and services should be flipped around on this diagram. That's a debate for another presentation, but they should come after you've done some simple automation of your maintenance. I'm not going to talk about every box on this slide. There's a lot of them. I want to use this slide to hit on something I mentioned on the last one. There are stages you go through as you're automating your operations around your network. It's important that you don't try to jump too far ahead. Many companies, especially smaller companies that have smaller budgets, you're into stage 0 where you're doing some scripting and you're doing CLI management. And you have vendors that are coming in trying to sell you to jump straight up to stage 2, stage 3. As a result, you're going to have to implement stage 1, 2, 3, and 4 if they're wanting to jump you that high, all at the same time in order to get meaningful return on your investment that you're doing. So it's very important that you understand where you are. You take those baby steps through the processes and don't try and jump too far ahead. You're going to end up spending a lot of money and either getting no return on it or getting a return that you're going to be pretty disappointed with. So how do we do this? So we like to refer to the automation on-ramp. It's a way of getting up on the automation highway in a gradual manner without spending a lot of money. You have to address it in a couple of key ways. You have to think about people, you have to think about process, and you have to think about the platform and the tools that you have. With people, you have to know who's going to own your automation, who's going to execute on that automation, and who you're going to accept the various requests from. For process, it's not just process of doing the automation. It's really easy to get caught up in, here are the steps in my maintenance task, but who are you going to allow to request automations of your group? How are they going to request those things? How are you going to prioritize those requests? And how are you going to keep up with that backlog of requests that you have as well? Lots of things operationally here that you typically don't think of as you start doing automation. And then platform is simple. What tools are you going to use to make this happen? A couple of things, some blogs I've written, I use this phrase a lot. It's all about your use cases. If you don't understand what you're trying to do and have a finite list of the use cases that you're wanting to automate, then you're going to go buy a tool and you're going to try and boil the ocean. You're going to spend a lot of money. You're going to be very unhappy with the results you get. So make sure you understand what you want to do. Spend some time on that. Once again, to some people, that may be the no-brainer statement of the day. As I've said a couple of times, you have to crawl before you can walk. Some of you may already be walking, but you have to walk well before you can run. So make sure you do that as well. And if you're at the CLI and scripting level, there's an evolution you're going to have to go through as an organization before you can get to real meaningful automation as well. Once you do that evolution into a more advanced set of tools, that may be Ansible, it may be Tower or AWX on top of Ansible, it may be a system like Cisco's Network Services Orchestrator, various tools that are out there. You have to evolve into those tools first, and then you can accelerate the automation. Don't try to jump too far ahead, and I've repeated that a bunch of times, but I cannot stress enough how important that is. One more time, as if you didn't need to hear it again, make sure, know where you are now and evolve before you try to accelerate too much. So people, we'll run through this one really quick. So you got to know who's going to own your network automation. Do you need a dedicated group that is your network automation group? And the answer to that is no. You don't necessarily need that. If you're a large enough organization, maybe you do. Maybe there's enough automation activities that you need to have that dedicated group with 5 to 10 people in it that are focused on this. Roles required at a minimum, you need to have a lead person. You need to have an automation designer that works on the details of how this is going to work, architecting your solution. Engineers and subject matter experts that are either going to execute and work with the designer to make sure what they design meets their needs. Do those have to be 4 or 5 people? No, it doesn't. In a small organization, one person may be able to fill all of those roles. It's a good reason I named that roles instead of people. So just remember that it goes back to this all about your use case. Your use case also involves your company, what's right for your organization. So process, there's a term I like to use called the automation factory. This is where you want to have a way that you're going to manage your automation work. You want to make sure that you have a process in place for people to submit requests. That includes yourself. You need to be organized on this. Tools that can be used for this can be anything from software development world where you're using a Jira or a Rally or something like that. It could be your ticketing system, Remedy, where you're just tracking the activity, but you have to track it, you have to prioritize it, and you have to execute on that and keep your backlog in control. So platform, try to do a check of what you already own as a company. Don't go out and start buying things before you know what your other groups have. You may have licenses not being used for tools that you're talking to a vendor about, so you may be wasting money. You need to make sure you do that inventory of what you have. Try to leverage those tools. Anything that has an API, anything that's been written and deployed in the last 3 to 5 years, it's probably good enough for you to start getting some meaningful use from. There's lots of open source tools out there. Don't think you have to spend a lot of money with vendors. There are open source alternatives. They may not do everything the vendor solutions can do for you, but you should look at those first and then leverage the vendor when you can. So some example tools, Ansible, Salt, Chef, Puppet, AWX Tower, ONAP is a big discussion, recently moved over to the Linux Foundation. Bitbucket, GitHub, we're going to talk about how those can come into play. A lot of people see those and think, well, that's what my developers use. I don't need to use that. You don't need to, but I'm going to show you an interesting way to leverage those if you want to and don't have other tools that can accomplish that. So I picked out a couple of simple use cases just to walk through how those tools could be leveraged. We'll talk about an architecture of the little proof of concept I did to lead up to this. So config management and maintenance automation are the two major things we're going to talk about. With config management, you've got to back up your configs, and it's very useful to be able to see a diff between your two configs. What changed, even if it was as simple as an IP address or inserting new config. And MOP automation, OS upgrades are a common thing that needs to be automated, as well as turning up sub-interfaces. There's a list of things this could have been, but I tried to keep it pretty simple for this purpose. The proof of concept I set up uses AWX, which is, for those that don't know, it's the open source project of the code that they use for Ansible Tower. It's a little more complicated because they're not going to give you a prepackaged solution necessarily with that. But you do also have the bleeding edge, latest, greatest features in that code base. There's also a few features like their workflow that you can take advantage of that you don't get with Tower unless you do the paid version. Just a hint on that. Ansible itself is what we used. I used Bitbucket, that's the tool of choice that we use for our code management, so it was a natural for me. I store my playbooks in Bitbucket. We also pulled configs over into Bitbucket. And the device we used was a Cisco CSR1K, just so that we were doing something against a real device. Virtualized, but real. So config backups, you can write playbooks that'll pull the config, store it out into Bitbucket. Pretty simple. This part of it's pretty straightforward. The big thing about storing it in something similar to Bitbucket or something that has similar capabilities is the ability to see the history of those changes over time, being able to see the difference in the previous configurations or pull a previous configuration to roll back to that config if you need to. The diff, this is pretty important in my opinion, especially when you're doing some pre-checks and post-checks as you're going through maintenance activities, to make it really easy to see what changed. Some of the examples I have here, the two that have the red circles, that's just an IP address changed from between an activity and another. The green and the red highlighted in the other image there, the green is a config block that was inserted into the device. Red is one that was removed. So it just gives you a quick, very visual way of seeing what's changed across your maintenance activities. It's important to be able to see this so you can easily decide whether you need to roll back or not. Or if something broke and if all your processes are proper and someone did something they weren't supposed to, you can see what the config should have been and track who made that update. It's a little totalitarian in a way that you want to see everything that happened, but some people have problems with that. But in a network, you have to. The playbook for our sub-interface turn up, a few things about Ansible playbooks. Want to make sure that you variabilize as much as you can. You don't want to have a separate playbook that you have to go edit every time you call it to turn up a specific sub-interface or to load a specific config or to upgrade your OS. You can build variables into your playbooks so that those things are very reusable. Just make sure you don't end up with a million playbooks that you're managing. That defeats the purpose of trying to automate things because you just move the effort into managing your playbooks at that point instead of the effort being in the network. So be careful about that. Also, don't try to put too much into a playbook that you make that playbook very specific to a very individual use case so that you have to go rewrite that thing if you're doing another use case. If you break the playbooks into smaller chunks, and you can get carried away with this, you can break it into too small of a chunk that you have a million playbooks at that point too, so you have to be careful. There's a balancing act here between enough in a playbook that you keep your playbook numbers low, but not putting every single command necessarily in one playbook that you're going to lock yourself into only being able to use that playbook in one specific segment of your network, for instance. One of the things that AWX / Tower brings you is a way to manage your playbooks. You can have projects and jobs that are defined in that so that you can keep up with what those are. Changes that are made to the playbook are automatically updated into your job templates. You manage your credentials for network access, so you can drive everybody through here so that they're not going to the command line and have everything open to them. The only thing about that, you may wonder, well, why wouldn't I want everybody to be able to go to the command line? Some of your less skilled engineers are new people, your entry-level people. You may not want them having full access to just do anything they may have read about online. So this is a way to segment that down to what they can do and what they can't do. I've known people that I just wonder what this did, turns out into a major network outage, and they don't know any better. So it also has a simple inventory, very simple inventory of network devices. You're not going to get tremendous value out of that the way this tower is set up, but it is there. Simple workflows as well with AWX. You're able to link a series of tasks in a workflow to playbooks. Another thing I've mentioned before, and I'll probably mention again before we're finished, is it's very important that you do pre-checks, execute your maintenance, and do post-checks to make sure, and also do an analysis between those two to make sure you didn't break anything, make sure the state of your network is still what you want it to be, even if it's not the same. Different doesn't mean bad, but maybe, if you change the state of the network, make sure that end state is where you wanted it to be. One of the downsides of AWX and Tower is the fact that the task either succeeds or fails, and you branch based on that. There's not really any more sophisticated workflow capability there. You can do some things in the playbooks to dictate that success or failure with what it returns that maybe you could hack some more sophisticated workflow capability in there, but you're going to be just doing that. You're making your playbooks more complicated. And that will make sense why I even brought that up in a minute. This is using the network to code Ansible module. This is freely available. I have the GitHub link there if anybody wants to check that out. Basically, there's lots of modules out there people have created for Ansible to help simplify different things, like OS upgrades. This has purpose-built commands in that module to make it very simple. This is just an example of a playbook, and the slides will be available. I know it's hard to see what that actually says on screen, but take advantage of those extra modules. See what's out there in the community. There's a link that I have at the end of the presentation as well for some Slack channels you can look at to help find some of those extra tools that are out there. Don't think that the out-of-the-box Ansible capabilities are all that you have. And then everything in the dotted box there is what I've been talking about so far. That's the AWX, the Ansible, Bitbucket, and the device. The way this operates as an on-ramp is it provides you some level of automation, but there may be other groups in your companies that are doing NFV and data center and cloud-based, virtual-based automation. That's what I have in the green. There may be some SDN projects going on with controllers with ODL, Contrail, et cetera. All of these separate efforts, you can leverage each of those things with a network automation platform that you overlay across the top of this. That's where you're not necessarily gonna find as many open source tools to do that with, but when you overlay that network automation platform, you can do cross-domain orchestration and automation. The tools that do NFV and data center specific tasks are really good at doing those tasks. There are things that AWX and Ansible and those tools are very good at doing in their domain. Likewise, in SDN, there's very specific functions. Those tools do those jobs very well. You have a service that traverses each of those domains. Those southbound tools are not going to be able to talk across the domains necessarily without some very creative hacking to make that work. That's where we really believe that there's a need for that network automation platform across the top when you get to more sophisticated automation. This more sophisticated workflow that enables, you can have different queries, you can integrate to other systems using that platform, cross-tool workflow, I mentioned that, custom forms and apps if you need to do that, as well as exposing some APIs northbound so you can be kicked off by a ServiceNow, a Remedy, or tools like that. So it's, I guess the point of all of this is look at what you have now, leverage what you have now, look at the open source tools that are out there, and just start playing with this. Try to move your way up the stack from that stage 0, stage 1, et cetera. And then you have a story to go tell your vendors. And you can ask your vendors very specific things. And you can know your use cases. That way your money is going to be spent wisely when you do go to spend that 1 million, 2 million, 500,000, whatever the number is. You're going to get the return you need if you do your homework and learn this first. And any questions? Okay.
Thank you very much. Okay.